It's finally NFL Draft Week, and the Carolina Panthers are on the clock. Is it going to be Bryce Young calling the Queen City home? Maybe it's the Ohio State Buckeye, C.J. Stroud. Or will Frank Reich shock and surprise everybody? Well, we have our experts here to give us their predictions for Thursday's opening round. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our last edition of the NFL Mock Draft on Penn State Sports Night. I'm Zach Gershman, joined alongside by Mike Luttenberger and Logan Bourandas. Mike, let's start it off with you here. This is the week where dreams turn into reality for a lot of the young college football players out there. And I know you've been dreaming about this segment, both literally and figuratively. Walk me through your mock draft.
Yeah, so taking a look at my first mock draft, the odds-on favorite, Bryce Young, going number one overall. Don't really have to talk too much about that. Where it gets a little interesting is we don't really know what the Texans are going to do here at 2. A lot of people think they're going to go quarterback. A lot of people have been saying they might just go best available, which is Will Anderson Jr. I think that's a perfect scenario for the Colts. C.J. Stroud just falls right into their laps there. The Arizona Cardinals, however, they are a little frustrated with this Texans pick from Will Anderson. They go best available on defense, trade back that one spot and take Tyree Wilson. Another defensive tackle goes. I think the Raiders are basically a lock to go at cornerback here. But the problem is, will the Lions trade their pick? I don't have them, but it's very possible someone could jump in and take a Anthony Richardson type player. So I have the Raiders here getting screwed a little bit, taking that second cornerback off the board. Moving down the list a little bit, in my draft, you see a lot of edges go and then a lot of offensive tackles go. Here, I think this is an absolute no-brainer. You saw the Bears last year. Justin Fields was running for his life. They have to go offensive tackle here. Clearly the best one available. Going down the list, I think this is a good pick here for the Houston Texans, Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think he's the clear-cut number one, easily going first wide receiver off the board. We're not pairing him with a quarterback. We're going to wait till maybe in next draft. Maybe the Texans go with Caleb Williams next year. Moving down the list, obviously breaking news today, the Jets get Aaron Rodgers and they swap picks. I had Paris at first when I first made this mock draft going to the Jets, but instead the Patriots will slide in there. They're a little bit of a wild card for me. Not sure quite where they're going to go. They could go cornerback, maybe Joey Porter Jr., and that's where I have them going to the Commanders. I think the Commanders actually, watch out, they might trade back in this draft as well. So going into the back half of my first round, the Steelers take Deonte Banks. So I wanted to make that match made in heaven with Joey Porter Jr. staying in-state and going to the Steelers, but they really need that cornerback, and they're going to go with Deonte Banks just because he was taken right before. Will Levis, I think, slides down to the Bucs. That's a pick that I really like because the Bucs need a quarterback, and Will Levis is that guy where some people have him going second overall. He is the odds-on favorite to go second, but he could really fall down this draft. A lot of people have different opinions about Will Levis. But moving down the board, I got Bijan Robinson going to the Chargers. Austin Eckler requested a trade. So if that were to happen, I would see the Chargers going with Bijan Robinson. I think the best running back in this draft. And then here you see a ton of wide receivers go in a row. I think once one falls in the back half of my draft, I think there's just going to be teams jumping at the bit because there's only that top 3 or 4. Because after Addison, I think there's a huge fall off, maybe number 50 prospect. So I got Quentin Johnson going to Ravens, Zay Flowers going to pair up with Justin Jefferson, and the Giants finally get someone who can actually catch the ball in Jordan Addison. This is I have a mock trade here with the Chiefs and the Cowboys. Don't be surprised if the Chiefs go with, I think, Jamar Gibbs or maybe a Zay Flowers or wide receiver. I wouldn't, losing McCole Hardman, Juju Smith-Schuster, I wouldn't be surprised if they pick up another weapon and don't go offensive tackle. In my mock draft, I have wide receivers going a little early, so I have them coming up to get Gibbs here, and the Cowboys going back down because I think they could still pick up the tight end that they want in Dalton Kincaid back at pick 31. But moving back, the Bills bolster their O-line with Anton Harrison, and the Saints pick up that edge rush with Nolan Smith and their newly added Derek Carr.
Yeah, Mike, I really love that first round. And in a draft that's really unpredictable, we actually have the same first 4 picks to the same spots. We even predicted the same trade as well, 3 and 4 with the Colts and the Cardinals. So I also think Bryce Young, that's kind of been the trend right now. Carolina taking their quarterback and the Texans passing on theirs as well. My first change comes at 5, and we've seen that the Seahawks, they've started to really like Anthony Richardson going at 5, which could be a really interesting fit going from Geno Smith to Anthony Richardson. I have the Lions going best available, Jalen Carter. They're kind of very happy that the Seahawks go with quarterback at number 6. You have back-to-back corners, Christian Gonzalez and Witherspoon going back-to-back 7 and 8. You had the Skoronski pick at number 9. I had that one as well. And you had Will Levis going a little bit later in the draft to the Buccaneers. I think if Levis starts to fall down, you'll see that those quarterback-hungry teams try to make that trade. I think the Vikings do just that, trading up to number 10 to take Will Levis, kind of have him under the wing of Kirk Cousins, which could be really interesting in Minnesota. And you had the receiver string late as well. I think we saw this with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave last year. Those receivers went a lot earlier. So once one starts to go, I think we can see a lot more in that string. And I have the 3 straight receivers at 11, 12, and 13. I have Quentin Johnson as the top receiver to the Tennessee Titans. We saw how one-dimensional their offense was last year with Derrick Henry. They needed someone to catch the ball, trading A.J. Brown during the last draft. I think they make up for that with another receiver right there. Still at 13, I have Jordan Addison, recently traded up with the Packers. Jets made that trade as well. I still have the Packers getting a receiver for the new quarterback, one in Jordan Love. I also have a trade at 14 and 16 as well. The Washington Commanders trading up not to get a quarterback, but to get their choice at cornerback. I think they bring a local boy home, and Deonte Banks going from Maryland to Washington, D.C. Jets stay offensive line, and the Patriots beef up their front 7. Going on to the back half of my mock draft now, Mike, you try to get that pairing of Joey Porter Jr. and Penn State.
Made it happen.
I think it happens here. It's what we've seen. That's something that could happen so far in this draft. I think it happens there. Lions with their second pick in this draft. I think they replaced T.J. Hawkinson, a guy they traded away during the last season. I think he's the only tight end in this first round as well. Brian Branch, one of the higher-rated safeties, probably the only one projected to go in this first round. I have the Buccaneers beefing up their defense there. Bijan Robinson, I also have that same pick because of the Austin Eckler reason as well. We've seen, even if Eckler doesn't get that trade he's looking for to L.A., that always kind of spells doom for one of your star players when he wants out. So the Chargers kind of get their contingency plan over at running back, getting Robinson to pair off with Herbert. I have at 25 the only other receiver back in this draft, Zay Flowers, and you're trying to get the Giants someone to catch the ball. I think Zay Flowers is someone that could fill that role for the Giants, filling a role that Kenny Golladay could not for the New York Giants. The last pick I want to touch on, number 31. Mike, you had the Kansas City Chiefs trading up to get their running back. They tried this as the Super Bowl champions, the last pick in the draft a couple of years ago. Clyde Edwards-Helaire didn't work out, trying to get their replacement here in this draft with Gibbs.
And for the Kansas City Chiefs, Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th-round pick and had a huge impact in this past Super Bowl. So it shows that regardless if you're in the first 31 because the Dolphins have their pick forfeited, or in the 7th round, drafts are where dreams are going to be turned to reality, as we previously talked about. Now, obviously, the conversation is going to be centered around what the 4 quarterbacks are going to go in the NFL draft. You guys have very similar picks, with the first 2 being Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud, and then there's a little bit of surprise between Will Levis falling, Anthony Richardson going to number 5 to the Seattle Seahawks. But give me a player that we might not necessarily might be talking about much here that is going to be making an impact day one.
I'll talk about Gibbs a little bit more at number 31. He's really that guy that can do it all, especially if he's in the right fit. Coming out of the draft, I know me and Mike had Gibbs going to the Kansas City Chiefs. I think if that happens, that would be deadly for an offense that already seems to be just that, as I saw last season. But Gibbs, a guy that could do it all at Alabama. He didn't have a heavy workload during his last year as well. Only carried the ball around 140 times. We saw a yards per carry average over 6. So he's really a guy that was able to do a lot of damage with the rock, and he could catch the ball as well. He had a 40 time just over a 4.3. So he could be a really dominant player alongside Pacheco in a solid running back room.
No, honestly, he was probably my number 1 player that'll go under the radar, but be one of those unsung heroes. But one of the guys that I had that I think is really underrated and really should probably be in that top 15 is Quentin Johnston. an absolute beast at TCU. You look at the heights of the receivers, those top 5 receiver prospects. Quinn Johnston is 6'3". Jackson Smith-Njigba is 6'1". Everyone else is 6 foot or smaller. He is the only big receiver. You need those guys that can go up and get the ball. And that game against Kansas State, he went off. Absolute beast. I think whatever team gets him is lucky.
And one of the players that you both talked about that went to the same team in your mock draft was Bijan Robinson, somebody that I think is going to make a really big impact. But the reason why I wouldn't necessarily pick him as a sleeper pick is because there's talks about him going as high as number 10, potentially number 8 to Atlanta, or going down to 21 to kind of fill in that Austin Eckler type role. I will also say, though, I think Dalton Kincaid, who you did not have in the first round and who you had in the last pick, I think the tight end from Utah will make one team, whichever team that's going to be, I think they're going to make him pretty happy because he was one of the best hands throughout college football. And with a big body like that, always teams need pass blockers. They always need big catchers, and that's what you're going to get in Dalton Kincaid. But that wraps up for our final Penn State Sports Night mock draft. And not only is this the final mock draft, it's also our final time as students on Penn State Sports Night. So as we mentioned, dreams will turn to reality for some at the NFL draft. I think I could confidently say, speaking for all of us, that Penn State Sports Night has allowed for our dreams of becoming sports journalists to become reality. So for one final time, from Mike Luttenberger and Logan Bourandas, I'm Zach Gershman. Thank you for tuning in to Penn State Sports Night.
Hey everybody, thank you for tuning into this edition of Penn State Sports Night. We hope you liked that segment.
And we're sure there's other Penn State Sports Night segments that you are going to love as well. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more content.
And check us out on social media for updates and behind the scenes clips and pics. Follow us on Twitter at PSSN TV and on Instagram at PSU Sports Night to keep up with all the action.
For all of us here at the Belisari Media Center, we are
Penn State Sports Night.